And welcome to And One with EJ here on the Huddle Up Podcast Network or Huddle Up Incorporated. I am your host, Ernest EJ Christian. Coming to you a few days later than usual. We normally drop these on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, but today is Thursday. Of course, Thursday afternoon. Reason for that is my kids are on spring break this week, so therefore it's a little more tougher to get away to record. Things came up also last couple of days. But of course, the boss, Big Jim, says, okay, we'll bring him a show late in the week, no big deal. Again, I'm on Twitter at EJChristian7. How you guys doing? Missed you guys. We are getting closer and closer to my favorite time of year, the NBA playoffs. We are literally, 2.5 weeks away. I'm already looking at these seedings, looking at these positioning right now in the league, and I tell you, I am pumped up. I am pumped up for the playoffs this season. But we still got a couple weeks to go. Still got more positioning going on. A lot of things to be talked about. A lot of things to be decided. One thing to be decided right now is still the big conversation around the MVP race, which is my first take of the day. The MVP race, in my opinion, honestly, people are saying it's a three-man race. And while I don't necessarily disagree with that, it's between Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek Freak. I do think it's really a two-man race. I think it's a race between Embiid and Jokic. And it's not a knock on Giannis. To me, Giannis is the best player in basketball. In fact, I would say right now, by virtue of, people say Kevin Durant, no, look, you got to be available first off. Kevin Durant's inability to stay healthy eliminates him from that conversation as the best player. He's certainly top 5 when healthy. Giannis is mostly available. For his team when need be. Giannis, to me, is the best player in the league right now, and honestly, it's kind of not really a close second right now. I think Giannis is pulled away, in addition to the team success as well, too. But to me, right now, if you look at the MVP race, I think it's really a two-man race between Joel Embiid in Philadelphia and Nikola Jokic in Denver. Obviously, Nikola Jokic is vying for his third straight MVP title, which would be the first time, I believe, since Larry Bird did it in the early to mid-'80s, which would be a hell of an accomplishment for starters. Last week on the podcast, I said that Joel Embiid has leapfrogged Jokic as my MVP leader on the leaderboard. That is still the case this week. In fact, I would argue Embiid has probably put a little bit of a gap now between himself and Jokic, with Denver's struggles as of late. Embiid, of course, as well. Philadelphia right now is currently, I think, either the 2 seed or tied for the 2 seed or right there. I know them in Boston are right now battling out for that number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. As I check right now, let me check real quick, make sure I want to get that right for you guys for information purposes. So Philadelphia right now is currently the 3 seed, only a half game back of Boston, but they got a better record than Denver by virtue of half game. And I think if there's a separation that I have right now currently, and again, we still got 2.5 weeks to go, so things can change. The separation for me really has been the fact that when these two players met the first time, and they meet again, I think, very soon. I'm not sure when. I think it's next week after that. Embiid dominated Jokic. And dominated him. And that kind of has to matter. If this is a race that's a game of inches and whatnot, these are the things that kind of matter. And Joel Embiid has been, and Philadelphia for that matter, has been playing great basketball since the start of the new year. So, like I said, it's still a race. It's still not decided, because I can still go Jokic last minute. Like last year, I would, if I had voted last year, I would have voted Embiid, but, that was a last minute thing. This happened at the same time this year, too. But I think the overall spectrum right now is that right now, this is a 2-man race, not a 3-man race. I think right now, it's between those two guys. I think Giannis, I think what hurts Giannis in the conversation right now is that when he's missed time this year, Milwaukee hasn't really fallen off the planet. Milwaukee has still been relatively really good, actually. In fact, Jrue Holiday has been talked about as a guy that's starting to become more appreciated now in the absence of Giannis. And I'm not saying that they can't win without Giannis. They cannot win without Giannis to win a title. Giannis has to be there to win a title. I think Milwaukee's the best team overall. But I think in terms of value this year, you remove Embiid from the Sixers, this team is nowhere close to a championship conversation this year. Same goes for Jokic in Denver. So I think right now it's really a two-man race. Giannis is in the thick of things. And I think Giannis can still make a case in the next couple weeks, but I think it's becoming less of likely that he will leapfrog either of those two guys, barring both guys falling apart, honestly. So that's my first take of the podcast today. Take number 2. The Golden State Warriors and Memphis Grizzlies rivalry, to me, is by far the best rivalry in the association. It's fascinating, too, because it kind of came out of nowhere in some ways. We kind of forget that 2 years ago, these two teams actually met when Memphis was on the way up, and Golden State had that 1 year where Curry was just Curry by himself, Clay was out for the year, and Draymond injuries. Golden State made the play-in with Memphis. Memphis was the new kid on the block, and Memphis ended Golden State's season, okay? And then last year, Golden State, of course, beat Memphis in the playoffs, second round of playoffs, in a 6-game set that actually was a lot closer than people give credit for, especially with the fact that John Morant missed half that series. And when you combine that with all the chatter that happened after the season last year, and the chatter this year, and then Memphis starting to become this, all of a sudden, kind of unlikable team, kind of like an old school Detroit Pistons kind of team. You know, Dylan Brooks doing his thing, and him and Draymond Green chatting out, him and Klay Thompson chatting it and all that, and talking shit and all that. There isn't really any great rivalries in the NBA right now currently. So I think this is why a lot of folks like myself are leaning into this Memphis Golden State thing. And you have recent competition, these two teams in the playoffs, one playing and last year in the playoffs, of course. Now, obviously, Memphis has a lot to prove. Golden State is the main team here. They're in the middle of a dynasty. Okay, I know they're having a rough year, bad road team. If they won 2 road games in a row this week. But there is a lot to be said that Memphis has no ground to stand on to talk until they actually beat Golden State in a meaningful series. And in fact, other than the game last week, I think when they played, and granted, that game, if I'm not mistaken, that game was without Steph, although John didn't play a game either. This year, you could argue that Golden State is actually handing Memphis their lunch also, too, a couple times. So, but I think also, and I'm hoping to God that Golden State can somehow get that 5 seed. There's still time. No, actually not 5 seed, I'm sorry. Because Memphis is number 2 right now in the West, so that won't work out. I'm hoping to God that we can somehow get a Memphis Golden State series some point in the playoffs. So hopefully, if the Golden State holds on to that 6 seed, and maybe who knows, because with Paul George's injury, they may go to 5. But if they stay that 6 seed, Memphis is at 2, and let's say Golden State wins their first round series against Sacramento, hypothetically, Memphis wins their series against the 7 seed, whoever that may be, we get round 2 or round 3 rather. We're really round 2 because of the playoffs of Memphis and Golden State. But the bottom line is this: I think we are so thirsty for rivalries in the NBA, and we don't have any really. I mean, I guess to lesser extent, Dallas and Phoenix kind of started all of a sudden kind of had a little bit of a tripping thing going on. But to me, by far, Memphis and Golden State is the best rivalry in the league right now. And we'll see. Hopefully, we get something from these two teams in the postseason going forward. With both teams healthy, especially too, and John Morant being back in the lineup and all that. All right. Third take. Got word, I think, late last week. Michael Jordan, owner of the Charlotte Hornets, and also, people say arguably, or whatever, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan, is selling his majority share as owner of the Charlotte Hornets. So I want to look back at Michael Jordan's life as the owner of the Hornets and what he's done. In, I think it was 13 years he's on the team. This team's been only in playoffs twice. And it's kind of disappointing because it's not like the East Conference in those years has been dominant. There's been space for them to make some noise. Charlotte, they just can't seem to get over the hump. For all the talk about Michael Jordan being the greatest of all time, and certainly in my opinion he is the greatest of all time, as an owner he's been pretty, let's just say, putrid. And it's not to say he's on the level of a Daniel Snyder in Washington in the NFL or some of those guys. He's not a scandalous guy. He doesn't have these things going on outside of basketball that's scandalous in the same way that Daniel Snyder has it, or other owners we talk about in Robert Sarver, who's had to sell his team to Phoenix Suns about a month ago. That stuff. We're talking about purely basketball context here. Michael Jordan has been a disappointment. Now he will, when he sells his shares, obviously, he will still apparently own a minority stock on the team. But the thing is also too, like, he bought the team for, I think, like a couple $100 million, like I think it was $300 million maybe, and the price tag, I mean, we're hearing that he could sell as high as $1.5 billion. So Jordan's winning there in terms of money grab. But I think a lot of that too. Also, people say, "Oh, well, Jordan's still winning because he's selling his team, way more than he bought it for." Yeah, okay, fine, but a lot of that has nothing to do with Jordan. Sports teams in general, and the price tag for sports teams in general has gone up tremendously in the last decade or so. So it's less to do with Jordan, because Jordan hasn't done much to make the Hornets more enticing than they were, say, 10 years ago. Okay, it's just that NBA team, the value of NBA teams today are much higher. The value of NFL teams is much higher today than they've ever been. So it's by default, by proxy, that Michael Jordan is going to get that major profit once he sells his team or his shares of his team. So let's be real there. Now, Jordan, like I said, Jordan, greatest of all time. We get all that, but as an owner, nah, that's not it, fam. So, all right, number fourth take here on the podcast. And guys, thanks for tuning in, of course, on the N1 EJ podcast. I want to play a. Actually, you know what? Let me say it for the last take here. My NBA Power 5. I haven't done Power Rankings on the show in a while. You guys love ranking things, top 5 things. I do it on my podcast all the time. I do it on Huddle podcast, especially during the season when I do my Tool Time segment with Big Jim on the main show. And I do my Power Rankings, my Power 5, bottom 5, Power 10, bottom 5, whatever. And I'm kind of disappointed that I have not, since doing this podcast, for 12 episodes in this podcast, I haven't done any Power Rankings on this thing. So let's go. And this should be fairly easy and pretty noticeable and pretty obvious here who in my opinion the top 5 teams in the league are right now. So my NBA Power 5 this week, you have number 5 for me, the Grizzlies. They've actually played well without John Morant. Now John Morant's back. He came back, first game back last night. Had a really good game too off the bench. I think it was 16 points. He probably on the bench for a couple more games according to head coach Taylor Jenkins. But the Grizzlies right now are all of a sudden, you talk the Western Conference, talk about the openness of the Western Conference. Obviously, you add the Paul George injury, which, thank God for the Clippers, not catastrophic. He'll be reevaluated in 2 or 3 weeks, so hopefully the Clippers, if they can hold serve and not fall behind, because again, the problem is, while they're the 5 seed, they're only 2 games up of the 12th or 11th seed in the Western Conference, Lakers. So there's still danger for the Clippers if they fall out, lose a couple of games here, and the teams behind them start winning games on top, they can fall out of the play. That's the playoffs, but the play it all together. So very careful. But in that case, the West wide open. Kevin Durant should be back with Phoenix soon by playoff time, and obviously the Lakers to get in, they could be a problem. Lots of teams in there. Golden State's starting to figure out a little bit now, as of late. But Memphis, the Grizzlies. People kind of assume that because the Grizzlies not having John Morant, while they were solid this year, they've held on. Talk about Denver doing their thing, and Denver obviously done a great job this year, with Jokic and company. But Memphis has maintained, and they've have had a star player for a number of weeks, over a month actually, and they're still a 2 seed. I'm starting to buy in on the idea of Memphis not just being a playoff, going deep to the playoffs like last year, even deeper, but being the Western Conference representative in the NBA Finals this year. I can buy that because they've had the experience last year. They're talking as a team that is a title contender. And if you believe you are, well, who am I to tell you no? I'm buying in Memphis, actually, to be honest with you. In fact, don't be surprised if I pick Memphis in my when we do the official playoff predictions once that time comes. To be in the finals, or at the very least in the Western Conference Finals. Just saying. Number 4 on my Power 5, Denver Nuggets. Again, they've kind of faded the last couple weeks, but it's still holding on to number 1 seed. They're likely going to keep them 1 seed and whatnot. Obviously, you want to see this team do well, do more in the playoffs. Jokic obviously might get us MVP this year. We'll see, third in a row. We'll see. But it's about the playoffs, and the pressure now on Jokic and company to get the job done in the postseason. I still have some doubts that he can, because even though they are number one in the West, there are a lot of teams in that conference that once get key guys back, like I said, Phoenix and Kevin Durant, and obviously John Morant's back for the Grizzlies, and LeBron back for the Lakers. If they get in somehow, I can't say I'm fully confident in Denver to get the job done. And I love their team. They have a very well-rounded team, arguably one of the best rosters, or the best roster in all of basketball. But playoff time, things change. Just saying. So Denver got to show it to me. Number 3 on my Power 5, the Celtics, and they've kind of slipped up the last month or so, but they kind of blew the load early in the year too. They were the dominant Celtics early to start the year, and then kind of a reverse of last year when they started slowing in and caught fire late. I will say with Boston though, and you have also the talk about Jaylen Brown possibly opting out his contract at the end of the year, depending on how things play out there. There's some pressure now on the Celtics, especially to get this job done with this tandem with Tatum and Brown, because Brown may not be there to be on this year. Now people think that whatever, we'll see what happens. There's some saltiness on Jaylen Brown's part in terms of how he was being dangled off of Kevin Durant when the Durant rumors came out after he requested a trade from Brooklyn back in last summer. That plus, obviously, Jaylen Brown, I'm sure, sees himself as the number one guy. It is Tatum's team, but Brown is right there. So there's a little bit of pressure down in Boston here. But they played better. They had a big win against the Kings on Tuesday night on the road. They had a couple of big wins here recently. So let's see if they get all together in time for the playoffs. But Boston number 3 on the Power 5 this week. All right, number 2 is the Sixers. Now, you're probably saying, well, how'd you put them ahead of Boston right now when you said yourself that Boston owns Philadelphia? This is true. But Philadelphia has been surging the last couple weeks, and you can't ignore that either. I still have my doubts about Philadelphia against Boston in the East. But here's the thing. I think you guys got to follow here. Philadelphia is a bigger threat to, at least at this point, to Milwaukee, in my opinion, than they are to Boston, until further notice. I think Milwaukee would rather play Boston than Philly, because the Embiid matchup it's going to be, Embiid's playing at a level right now, man. Embiid is probably playing on a top 3 guy, as I said, MVP level right now. I think they'd rather play Boston than Philadelphia. And I think the Sixers have been playing so well this last couple weeks too, especially. You gotta give them credit. Obviously, I still have questions about whether they can get past Boston, but I think it's any time they could be Boston's this year to do it. So, number 1 is easy, Milwaukee. Giannis is back. Giannis is dominating, and even when they didn't have Giannis a couple games last couple weeks, they still have been able to get the job done. Drew Holiday's having a career year. I'm glad he's getting all the respect he deserves. Chris Middleton's slowly getting back into shape and getting back to where he should be. That big 3 there. Giannis, of course, like I said, Giannis is the best player in basketball. Milwaukee has a no-nonsense team. I love this team because they are a team that comes to play. There's no nonsense, no drama, none of this stuff, none of the off-court stuff, none of the contractual stuff going on. No, this team is here, no nonsense. The guys locked in, locked up. Mike Budenholzer has done a fantastic job of creating a culture there that people are buying into. And this is the thing. They're the lunch pail team. It's not sexy. They just got the job done. And in turn, they turn into be the best team in basketball right now. All right, so this is my Power 5. Again, 5-1. You got the Grizzlies, you got the Nuggets, the Celtics, the Sixers, and the Milwaukee Bucks rounded out there. All right, before I go, and I stole this from ESPN yesterday, and I don't care. I'll give them full credit for this. Saw a thing on, and I tend to, when I watch content, especially on ESPN, daily content, instead of watching ESPN like on TV, I tend to go on YouTube and I'll just watch different clips they put up on their page, on the feed. And I saw this thing here where they had this game called Max, Trade, or Waive. Basically, you take 3 guys, and which guys would you max out? Would you trade? Would you waive? So the 3 guys they had here on here the list to match it up was they have LeBron James, they got Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant. So which 3 guys? Which guy would you max? We get a max contract. Which guy would you trade? and which guy would you waive? The guy I would max is Steph Curry. And why? He's still in his prime. Now, granted, all three of these guys are still in their prime. Steph Curry is probably, of the three guys, the guy who stays healthiest the most. Probably still has a longer prime now because of, first of all, his shooting, for starters. The team he's on top of that. And you're going to get a lot of good years out of Steph Curry from this point on. Steph Curry is the guy I would max the three guys. The guy I would trade would be LeBron James. Well, the guys I would trade actually would be... Ooh, this is tough. I said LeBron James, but I feel like I can get more from Kevin Durant at this point than LeBron James. So I would trade Kevin Durant because if you can get 4 ones that Phoenix got, that Phoenix had to give up to get him, for Brooklyn got for Kevin Durant. Durant's also 4 years younger. And look, I'm a LeBron guy, for the record. We're not talking about all time. Talk about right now in 2023. I would trade Kevin Durant because I feel like I can get more on the open market for him than I could for LeBron James. I waive LeBron James, obviously. Now, if we're talking about all time, it's a different story. Okay, I'm maxing LeBron James, obviously. Okay, that's the different conversation. But in 2023, LeBron age 38, Kevin Durant age 34, I believe. Steph Curry age 34. I would max out Steph Curry. I would trade Kevin Durant based on the value, and I would waive LeBron James. Of course, I'm going to say this, and I got a bunch of LeBron James fans in my mention saying, "What are you doing? How you get?" We're not talking about LeBron all time. If we did this as an all-time thing, obviously, I would obviously max LeBron James. Max LeBron James. I would trade Steph Curry because of the value I can get back for him, and Kevin Durant because of the injuries and whatnot. That's tough, though. You're talking about three guys who have a case to be... Well, first of all, one guy, in my opinion, is number 2 on my all-time list. The other guy is number 10 on my all-time list. And Kevin Durant, depending on how his career ends, could be inching close to that top 10 conversation in the years to come. So, again, I would max Steph Curry. I would trade Kevin Durant because of the value. And I would waive LeBron James because of the age. And he's your year anyway. So, anyway, that will do for this episode of the And One with EJ podcast. Again, I'm on Twitter at EJ Christian. Let's check out all my work. First off, love podcasts. I have Earth Speaking podcasts. I do every so often. I just did a baseball episode, season preview with Mikey B, who's part of also of Huddle Incorporated here. Did a baseball preview there on their stuff for that. I also have a topic-centric podcast called Earth Speaking Unfiltered, where I do once a blue moon, take a topic, a trending topic, and just kind of ramble and rant on it. I just did one on Cam Newton, actually, a couple days ago. First episode I did on there in 2 months, actually. And then, of course, all my work, go to my YouTube page at youtube.com/@ErnestChristian. So, youtube.com/@ErnestChristian. I'm definitely pushing my YouTube page, especially all my work's there, all the archives and all the clips I do and stuff. So, clips from this show too, especially, will be up there as well. So, until then, we'll talk next week, and we should be back at our normal Tuesday/Wednesday slot on the podcast feed. So, until then, guys, have a good weekend, and stay up, and bye for now. Later.